I'm at the Atherley Narrows, located just outside the city of Orillia. Beside me is the channel that divides Lake Simcoe and Couchiching. It's part of the Trent-Severn waterway system. This area was designated a National Historic Site in 1982 because of the Minjickening fish weirs built by Aboriginal people over 5,000 years ago. It's considered to be a sacred place. That part of history is a known fact. To this day, a few of the wooden stakes that were tapped into the bottom of the channel to trap fish still exist. But another event took place here that has little mention in the history books, and it happened not that long ago. An event so important, it helped to shape the face of our country as we know it today. On April 27, 2013, the City of Toronto hosted the bi-centennial commemoration of the Battle of York. Special attention was given to the Chippewas of Rama and Georgina, Beausoleil, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations for their participation in the War of 1812. The following are the events leading up to that historic day. The Chippewas of Rama First Nation annual powwow took on special significance in the summer of 2012. The event was themed Remembering Our Warriors of 1812.
Our people were pretty instrumental in the War of 1812, and if it wasn't for people's participation, I don't think the British would have been successful in maintaining their borders. During the time, the British were really concerned about their own records and maintaining records and documents about their own people. I don't think they really considered First Nations people as people.
I think we're going to start with what happened in Ottawa, really now a couple of weeks ago, right, Andrew and Myrna? It's about 16 months ago that we started getting together to talk about War of 1812, and we think for the first time ever, without politicians basically putting the group together, representatives from Christian Island, Georgina Island, and Chippewas of Rama have got together to talk about War of 1812 because we have a shared history. Now more and more people have joined us, retired teachers, curriculum writers, historians, curators, people from the City of Toronto have an interest in this as well.
And I'll have to dig through the file and take a look for them.
The committee members are on a journey, one of discovery that will hopefully lead them to the identities of local warriors from their respective communities that fought alongside the British during the War of 1812.
Without First Nations participation in the War of 1812, we would have lost the war. I don't think there's any question. The very, very small forces that were here in Upper Canada, some 7,500 soldiers, if they didn't have that Native participation, the natives were at virtually every battle and they participated in every battle.
Well documented are the efforts of Chief Tecumseh and his alliance with the British during the War of 1812, in particular with Sir Isaac Brock, but little is known or recorded about the individual First Nations warriors who fought alongside Tecumseh.
Hardly nobody seems to know anything about the War of 1812. When you look at the history books, Native people are given maybe passing mention. We need more than passing mention. We're being given this opportunity 200 years later to commemorate this war and our part in it. So this is our chance to maybe write curriculum, teach museum people about the War of 1812, get some artifacts together that show that we were there and it was our ancestors who were fighting in this war. We believe that when we go down to Fort York in April 2013, that our ancestors will answer the call again. When that drum starts to sing that old song, they'll come and join us and dance with us again and say, in our language, miigwech, for thanking us.
Brian Charles, a member of the War of 1812 committee, has taken his search to the Orillia Public Library.
Thank you very much. Really pleased to be here this morning.
He's hoping to find documents that would lead him to a flag, a British standard flag from the War of 1812 that was given to Ojibwe Chief Yellowhead, chief of Lake Simcoe.
We know that it existed as late as 1912, and that it was in the hands of a gentleman that was a lawyer and then a judge in Orillia named John Hugh Hammond. And a number of articles had been turned over to Mr. Hammond by the Yellowhead family. And there is a citation in the 1912 Orillia packet that talks about that Mr. Hammond was holding this flag that had been given to the Yellowhead Senior for his service and loyalty to the British during the War of 1812. And so looking for any remnant or record of that flag brought us here to the archives at Orillia Public Library.
And if that isn't an extraordinary artifact, then there aren't many extraordinary artifacts out there.
Certainly it's a piece of our history, and I think that it really tells the foundation of the story, that there was this alliance between First Nation chiefs, headmen, and warriors that supported the British during the battles of and the War of 1812.
And remember that we were called together by the chiefs to meet at what is now the Atherley Bridge. I mean, there was no Atherley Bridge at that time in 1812, but that's where we were called together. That was our traditional gathering place, and still even continues to be today in 2012. So we were all gathered together. The warriors came there. There were speeches given about why we need to help with this war. And so it was just as the crow flies, 4 miles away from where I'm standing right now, where that historic meeting took place.
World War II veteran Fred Smith was there in 1944 when the boys hit the beach to begin the invasion of Normandy.
This wasn't a very good day. I was lucky that day. The job that had to be done, so I done my part, I think. Maybe I could have done more, I don't know. I was in for 81 days. I was lucky to last that long. A lot of other people didn't.
For the record, there were 2 Chief Yellowheads. Chief Yellowhead Sr. fought at the Battle of York and was badly wounded. His son, Chief William Yellowhead Meskwaki, also fought at the Battle of York. It is believed that Muskoka was named after the Yellowheads, as this was the hunting grounds for the Lake Simcoe Chippewas. Chief William Yellowhead also had particular ties to a church in Orillia. This is St. James Anglican Church in Orillia. Situated in front of the church is a memorial garden with one stone in particular standing out amongst the others. That of Chief William Yellowhead Meskwaki's.
This was his home. He lived here. Chief Yellowhead owned the land here in downtown Orillia, this area particularly. He gave this land as a gift to Christian churches that were coming in. He himself was a baptized Christian, and he wanted the churches to have this land for their use and for their building of church buildings. His house became the first Anglican parsonage, as we have commemorated up on the plaque behind me, for his generosity. And he is buried on this land, which was a churchyard.
There was kind of a fence around there, and they were just right on the edge of the fence.
Myrna Snake Watson remembers on her visits to Orillia from Rama with her grandmother coming to see the gravesite of Chief William Yellowhead Meskwaki, or so she thought.
And there was names on the stones, which was Yellowhead. So I assumed it was on the right-hand side of the church. There was there was maybe 6 stones at that part, so they did look like graves. So I assumed it was Yellowhead's grave.
Well, you're absolutely right. The stones were placed over there because they had moved The bodies of the deceased have been moved up.
But not at the time that I was here.
There was never any graves there, actually.
Funny, well, the stones were there.
Yeah, they were, but there were never any graves there. And the stones were moved over here. Chief Yellowhead, they were pretty certain, was out that way.
According to a description passed down through some oral history, Chief William Yellowhead Meskwaki is buried at the corner of Coldwater Road and Peter Street. The roads were only one lane back in the day.
Well, this part I don't know. I'm just learning. They said they moved them to the other side of the church. But why was there no markings over there, or why wasn't Rama told about it? Because this is where we all get confused. What happened to him? Is he really there?
Bill Jameson is on his way to Christian Island. The inhabitants are members of Beausoleil First Nation. Their ancestors were the Assens Band, who relocated from Beausoleil Island in 1856. Jameson is originally from Christian Island, but now resides on the mainland at Cedar Point, which is also part of the Beausoleil First Nation. Jameson has a vision, and today he is going to share it with some community members as well as some local military veterans. He too, having come from a military background.
Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Here's what we plan to do. We want to replace this, upgrade it a little bit more, and pay a little more respect of the veterans we've had over the years in this community, starting from the War of 1812. If we can find the names and the people that participated in that War of 1812, it's been very difficult. There's no record available for, especially the warriors. Of course, the leadership, like Chief Yellowhead, Chief Assens, and Snake, are mentioned in various references, but no names of the supporting cast, so to speak. We want to carry on.
Jameson's search to find the names of warriors has taken him in many directions, including the British archives, but to no avail. Names or not, Bill Jameson is undeterred.
I think the option of indicating on the memorial that there was indeed participation from members of this community in that particular conflict. So we'll recognize the War of 1812 as our battle as well.
My tank broke down one time. Holy, I got almost frozen there.
3 veterans from Christian Island, including Bill Jameson, sharing their stories and common history. Terry Assens served with the UN peacekeeping mission in Cyprus during his military career. He is also a direct descendant of Chief John Assens, who fought in the War of 1812.
I am very, very proud to say that my name is Assens. Very, very proud.
Assens is also very proud of his time spent with the Canadian military, except for one occasion.
The only time that I wasn't proud to serve was the time of the Oka crisis. I felt that I betrayed my people at that time. I had to be with my country, which was Canada, and then loyal to my people. It's a Canadian, they sent the Canadian Army after my people, you know? And that's when I had a different outlook with the military after that.
It's in the office.
For Jeff Meneg, joining the Canadian military was all about following family tradition.
Well, I joined the military because my father was in the military. My father was in the Korean War, and it was part of his family tradition as well. And we had ancestors that fought in the War of 1812. So we have a long military history. And we thought of it as being part of the alliance with Canada. So it was our way of continuing that alliance.
First Nations people were not conscripted to go into the First and Second World War. They volunteered, while at the same time they had to relinquish their status as a First Nation citizen. On their return home, they were refused the same benefits and entitlements as other veterans.
Especially losing your status and not having a home to come back to, and not having the benefits that your comrades, your fellow soldiers, airmen, sailors enjoyed. That means something. That's a sacrifice that that shouldn't have never happened.
35 years with the Canadian military, having worked in every province except PEI, 3 tours with the United Nations in Africa, and medals to show for it, Bill Jamieson has lots of memories, good and bad. He recalls a hitchhiking incident in his early years while in military uniform.
People at that time will readily pick up a person in uniform as opposed to somebody in civilian clothes. I was coming home from Ottawa, I believe, in the early days. And I was getting almost home because I spent a lot of time on the highway. Outside of Elmvale, coming up the hill, I was walking and I seen a car come along and hitchhiked. Got my thumb out, I should say, and the car stopped. They saw the uniform and they decided to give this poor soldier a ride, but as soon as they seen who I was, they sped off.
Depending on how much the budget is and how much we get for it, we could either do all 3.
Suzanne Howes is a counselor for the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. She is also a descendant of Chief Yellowhead and Chief Joseph Snake. Her grandfather, Enoch Big Canoe, served in World War II and the Korean War, while his son, Graydon Big Canoe, fought in the Korean and Vietnam War.
My uncle Graydon Big Canoe was never the same after the Vietnam War, and he didn't live long after because of obviously the demons that followed him out of that war. And I remember him as a young girl, a gentle man, and he's always been in the back of my mind, and that's why I named my son after him. And nothing was ever, he never got any recognition from serving in the war, along with my grandfather.
Enoch Big Canoe, like all First Nations people wanting to fight for Canada, was enfranchised, stripped of his native status. Howe's mother was only 6 years old at that time.
It would mean a lot to me to have recognition for him.
Howes believes that her mother, since deceased, would have also appreciated the recognition for First Nations warriors given some of her past experiences.
I remember as a young girl, my mother coming home after grocery shopping, and it's a vivid memory, and her dropping the bags at the front door and crying, going to her room and sitting at the end of her bed. And I would come in as a little girl and say, what's wrong? And she'd, say nothing, and she'd pull herself together. Years later, I found out that it was because people were snubbing her and, giving her dirty looks and making her feel ashamed of who she was. It was a sad time for Natives.
As I went through school, I developed more shame of who I was because what I was hearing, what I was reading, and what I was learning about myself and about my people. So you internalize that shame. And it wasn't until, very recently in the last, 15, 20 years that I've had a resurgence in my own life and my own culture, and I want to learn more about that.
Iwanchuk says more material relating to First Nations people is coming forward every day and is being infused into the school curriculum, giving an authentic voice to the storyline.
As we move along, and our students and even myself, we're discovering more and more about who we are, where we came from, more about our culture, more about our language, and we're discovering the essence of who we are and how connected we are to the land. It's our story.
You're excited about it?
I am.
John Snake, another member of the War of 1812 Committee, is also excited about the discoveries he's made regarding his First Nation history, specifically First Nations involvement in military conflicts.
I believe it started from my grandfather and 3 of his brothers participated in World War II. And then as I raised my voice to sing in honor and respect to all First Nation veterans, that this brought me back to a deeper understanding of how far back we go to being a warrior. And since I've been on this War of 1812 committee, I've learned more and more of our participation as First Nations people of why Canada is Canada today. A warrior could mean many different things, not just for battle. A warrior is somebody that provides for their family and that are there for the women and children, and be a great provider and a great protector and keep that fire strong. That's what a warrior is to me.
Some days I feel like a warrior. We want to help people. We enjoy helping people, and most of all, we're from this community, this Rama Reserve, so we wouldn't rather be anywhere else doing what we do. Hey guys, how about them Leafs last night?
I consider myself a warrior because I wake up every day, come to work, and you never know what might happen. Since it is such a small community, chances of an accident happening and you knowing them is pretty high. So it does get your adrenaline going, and you do want to do anything you can to help. Just like if you weren't working, say I wasn't a fireman, I'd still be the one to help.
I really enjoy the fact that all the kids look up to me, especially the little girls from the reserve. They will tell their teachers, I want to be a firefighter just like Ashley.
It's the final meeting with the War of 1812 Committee and members from Fort York and the City of Toronto before the bicentennial commemoration on April 27th. However, there is a hitch.
And so that even today's veterans that are still with us that have served the Canadian Forces are washed from the record by being excluded in that parade.
Committee member Brian Charles is referring to the military parade that will march from Queen's Park to Fort York to begin the commemoration at the fort. There will be no First Nation representation.
Sometimes the tape keeps replaying in our head. It's sounding the same as it was before, and have we made any progress? We've worked really hard for 18 months with this group to try and teach them, and at the same time they've taught us too. So we need to find that ground in the middle and make sure that we're honoring both sides of a very important story.
It is decided that all 4 First Nations chiefs will be at a VIP station along the parade route during the event. First Nations veterans have the option of joining the procession following the parade on its last leg into Fort York. He is the last remaining Yellowhead by name. Vernon Yellowhead lives on the outskirts of Rama on 44 acres of land that he believes was acquired by Chief William Yellowhead. Like so many others, Yellowhead says that information and knowledge is the key to understanding his heritage and culture.
Something that all the First Nation people, especially in Rama, should know about how this land got to be the way it is. When I was going to school, there was nothing taught about Indians, very little. And what you did learn was from the white man. That's my dad, my mother, my brother Henry, and that's myself. When I'm down in Fort York, I'm going to be very proud. I'm going to represent my family, and I think that's going to be my day. I'm pretty sure the Chief Yellowheads are looking down at me. You know, they want me to represent them really proud and honored. I'm going to bring some of my family for support because they want to be there too. It's going to be a history-making thing for us. And myself, it makes me proud to be who I am. That's the Yellowhead.
And at the Great Peace of Montreal, this alliance is confirmed between Anishinaabe, Ojibwe people, and the Iroquois people. The biggest discovery that we've come across in this research is finding this list of 10,000 warriors that were loyal to the British at the outbreak of the War of 1812. And this confirms for us that not only local First Nations and warriors were involved in the War of 1812, but First Nations people from across Upper and Lower Canada and on the other side, the western side of the Great Lakes, were loyal to the British and were crucial to the outcome of the War of 1812 and the defense of Canada.
It's 2 days before the bicentennial commemoration at Fort York. These elementary students from Rama are rehearsing the national anthem in Ojibwe. They, along with 3 other First Nations choirs, will be singing the anthem at the commemoration.
I feel proud that we're singing the national anthem in Ojibwe. I'm excited about driving to Toronto so I can learn more about the War of 1812, and my ancestors were in it, so I'm excited to learn more about that.
I'm sure the ghosts of our ancestors will be around, and hopefully what we're celebrating on that day will be of some benefit to the survivors.
There'll be stories shared and many different interactions and maybe, you know, friendships struck and maybe a few more pieces of that puzzle we'll be able to put together.
Stand up. Bad news. Stand up.
I was just talking to New Credit people, Christian Island, Georgina Islanders, and they said that was a really good day. We'll see you again because we're going to start to write the curriculum to put in our schools to make sure it goes across Canada and maybe into the U.S. to tell the real story of our hand in this war.
I think my mom and my grandfather and my Uncle Graydon were here today. I hope this is the beginning of an education for the masses and the population to realize what a huge contribution our First Nation has made in every aspect of this country.
As the War of 1812 was about to begin, former U.S. President Thomas Jefferson declared the acquisition of Canada this year will be a mere matter of marching and will give us the experience for the attack on Halifax, the next and final expulsion of England from the American continent. Major General Isaac Brock had little more than 1,600 British regulars in his command to defend all of Upper Canada from the invading American forces. Had it not been for 10,000 First Nation warriors and chiefs, including those who stood on this very ground loyal to the British Crown as allies, the taking of Upper Canada would surely have been a mere matter of marching.